Hey guys, welcome to Book Club Wednesday, and this week we are starting the very first and second chapter. I decided to only do 2 this week of Girl Go Wash Your Face, and I think that's going to be my pattern, 2 chapters, because I really am starting to like this book, and I just think that 4 was lofty for me to even think that I was going to be able to knock out 4 chapters in a day with my toddler, and also for me to be able to review 4 chapters in my video, not just be like an hour and a half long. So not doing that. But I know I mentioned doing the devotional, and I kind of opened it and glanced at it today, and it does not go chapter by chapter. It's kind of just an overview. So I think to keep my videos from being too long or getting confusing with the book, I think I'm just gonna do the devotional on my Instagram. I'm not gonna actually, do any kind of copyright stuff and say the whole devotional or anything like that, but you can find it on the YouVersion Bible app. I'm starting to feel like the spokesperson for YouVersion, but I think in my Instagram stories, I'm just gonna kind of talk about what I get out of it, or, something. I don't know. I'll decide once I read it, and you guys can go check me out on Instagram if y'all are interested in that. So this book is based around the lies that Rachel Hollis believed, and there's 20 of them, one for each chapter. And at the end of each chapter, she gives you tips that she used to help overcome these lies. Chapter 1 is the lie that something else will make you happy. And right off the bat, you realize very quickly that this book is geared towards women. So prepare yourself for that. Chapter 1 starts right off with stories about her wedding herself. She makes it very clear in this book that she is not trying to hide or sugarcoat anything. She is real and raw about her stories and experiences. Chapter 1 tells you things like, you are responsible for your happiness. If you're unhappy, that's on you. And she does preface that with, she is not including depression and grief into that those are separate, and that there is a time for that. But she does say that life should not feel overwhelming all the time, that life was meant to be lived. She is very clear that we are going to fail, but not to let that stop you from trying to be a better person day after day. Just keep putting in that effort and not letting your failures discourage you. There was a quote that I love so much. Like, I had to tweet it out immediately. I thought it was just so empowering, and I'm just gonna read it real quick. She says, "This is your life. You are meant to be the hero of your own story." And I know as Christians, our first thought is, no, Jesus is our hero. And she does talk about that. This book does have a Christian message. It is Christ-centered, but that you have a responsibility to live that life to its fullest. She compares it to being on a ship. There are times where you're controlling the ship, and there's other times where the ocean controls the ship, but overall you're manning the ship. There's a little part in chapter 1 where she says that people comment on her photos that her life looks so perfect. She says that she thinks that they mean happy. And even though she doesn't really touch on this in this chapter, that just kind of resonated with me. That how often do we confuse perfect with happy? We think that when everything, and I think that is a lot of what she's talking about in this chapter, she just didn't expound on it, but we think that when everything is perfect, then we can be happy. If we get it right, then we'll be happy. If we have all of the stuff that makes our life picture perfect, then we'll be happy. And it's a lie. You don't need anything to be happy but yourself. You have to be able to encourage yourself and uplift yourself. And that's kind of what I feel like the underlying message of this chapter is that you're in control of your happiness. There's actually a quote where she says, "You must choose to be happy, grateful, and fulfilled. If you make that choice every single day, regardless of where you are or what's happening, you will be happy." And I believe that. I believe that if you can determine to be happy, if you can find things to hold on to, why wouldn't you be happy? You tell your brain to be happy, and so it's going to be happy regardless of your circumstances, regardless of where you are. There's another quote that I want to read, and it says, "When you're engaged and involved, choosing to enjoy your own life, it doesn't matter where you are or frankly, what negative things get hurled at you, you'll still find happiness because it's not about where you are, but who you are. And this is another one where I want to kind of touch on something else that she didn't really touch on, and that is being engaged with people and the things in your life. I think in this generation of technology, we get so lost. We're so detached from each other, and our relationships are so superficial. We're not digging in deep and really getting to know and love each other. And I think that's a big key to happiness. It's depressing when you want people to love you like that, but you don't love them like that. So in turn, they don't love you like that. And that's a huge principle that I had to learn. You know, I see it so much in social media. Everybody wanting to talk about themselves, wanting attention, and getting depressed because they're not getting the attention they desire. But they're not giving that attention to anyone else. You have to be engaged with people, get to know them, and form real relationships to reap the benefits of relationships. And the same with life. If we want to reap the happiness of life, we have to be engaged with it. If you're detached from life, how are you going to get anything out of it? You have to be living it to be able to enjoy it. If you're trying to overload yourself and multitask and, do 17 things at once, you're not going to enjoy it because you're not here. You're here and you're here and you're here and you're there, and your mind is too separated and detached from what's actually going on because you're trying to do all these things. I know I try and multitask and I'm all over the place and I'm not here. I'm not experiencing what's going on because I'm so far in the future trying to organize and figure all of my thoughts out and, get stuff accomplished and chase after this perfection so that I can be happy. And looking back, I have this blank slate of memories that I just don't have because I remember the stresses and I remember silly things that weren't important. One of the things at the end of this chapter where she talks about things that helped her is to stop comparing herself. But she goes further, and this was what I needed to hear. This is something I could relate to. She said she had to stop comparing herself to who she thought she was supposed to be. And how often do we do that? We have this image of who we want to be and who we think we are supposed to be, that role that you think that you're supposed to fill. And so you're constantly looking at that as reference for who you are right now, and you're judging yourself and you're frustrated with yourself. We hear so often that we're not supposed to compare ourselves to other people, but how often do we use the loophole and compare ourselves to who we want to be? And that will leave you defeated and unhappy. She ends chapter 1 with this line. I just wanted to share it with you guys because I think it was a really good way to end this chapter. She says, "You are in charge of your own life, sister. There is not one thing in it you're not allowing to be there." Think about it. So, wow. I mean, really, just think about that. When we want to complain about our lives, stop complaining. Do something about it. It's your life. Then chapter 2, which really got me motivated, it's called The Lie I Will Start Tomorrow. Oh, procrastination. Are you guys ready for this? Because I want to say I wasn't, but afterwards, my soul was so ready for this. I needed this chapter. The first quote I want to give you from this chapter is, "Magazines and TV shows spend a lot of time focusing on what to do when we fall off the wagon, rather than teaching us how to stay on it in the first place." And this just never even thought about it. In healthcare, we're constantly being taught prevention, prevention, prevention. But how often do we think about, instead of getting to that point where we fall off the wagon, beating it there, figuring out how to stick with something, not how to cope after you didn't stick with it. So she has a story in chapter 2 where she talks about how she had gone out with some friends, and I think it was just supposed to be like drinks or something, and turned into a whole dinner. They ended up staying out really late and eating a lot and chatting and having this really fun late night. And when she got home, she went and worked out, and she posted a little thing on Snapchat about how she worked out. And one of her friends who had been out with her that day was like, you still went and worked out after we stayed out so late? So she tells her friend, well, I was planning on doing it and I didn't want to cancel. And her friend comes back like, well, couldn't you have done it tomorrow? And she tells her friend, and I'm going to actually just read this because I want to quote it. No, because I made a promise to myself and I don't break those. Not ever. Ugh, she typed back, I'm the first person I break a promise to. Who else does that? When I read that, I was like, oh geez, I do that too. My word to other people is so much more important than my word to myself. That's crazy. Why is it that somebody else means so much more to us that we keep our word to them, but then ourselves, as soon as just the tiniest thing comes in that makes it the least bit inconvenient, we're like, oh, no, it's okay. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to blow that off. Oh, it's not a big deal. And we don't think twice about it. So from there, she starts to challenge us to view ourselves as a friend to ourselves and what kind of friend we would be to ourselves. She starts describing this friend that blows off plans with you because the TV show she's watching is so good. Or how this friend is always starting these different things, these different diets, these different goals, these different trends, constantly trying to start things, and then being so excited about them and then doesn't finish them. And how you would view this quitter friend and how you wouldn't take them seriously. But then on the flip side, you know, that friend that keeps their word and that just always does what they say that they're going to do, and they, you know, they're always 10 minutes early and they put in their best to everything. When that friend tells you something, the contrast of what you think of that friend, like you know that you know, like when they say they're going to do something, you're excited for them because you know that they're going to do it. There's no doubt in your mind. Whereas that other friend, you're already kind of like, okay, yeah, good luck with that. We'll see. You know, you already have that mentality. And then she compares that to our brain. She talks about this whole theory of how our brains operate in a cycle of mental patterns, and that our brain starts to learn that we're a quitter. She kind of compares this to physical workout and training for marathons, and she says something along the lines of, if you're used to running for 4 miles, then your body can handle that 4 miles, but after that is when your body is going to start to protest and you're going to start wanting to give up and quit. And that's how your mind is. That if you start something, your brain will get to the point where it's been before and then say, okay, this is where it's getting hard. This is where I can start quitting. This is where I typically quit. This is my pattern. So she encourages you to really think about what you want to take on so that you can start accomplishing your goals and get in this new mind cycle of accomplishment, of your brain saying, okay, we've done this before, we can do it again, and you can start meeting your goals. She shows you what this will start looking like. Once you decide that you're really going to follow through, it makes you look at your goals differently. You're going to take more time to think it out and plan it out to make sure that you have success. And you may not be as quick to pick up these big, lofty goals that you can't accomplish. But instead, she advises you to pick small things so you can start accomplishing them and build yourself up to the bigger things. And then the last thing I will leave you with from chapter 2 is, again, at the very bottom in the What Helped Me, she talks about being careful with your commitments. She warns you that the value of your commitment isn't always enough to motivate you to follow through with it. And that was another one that, like, I believe that lie. I've thought for so long that, oh, this means a lot to me, I'm gonna follow through. I'm gonna do this because it's good for my health or because whatever. But honestly, how often has that really made the difference for us? For me, probably not ever. Something else has had to encourage me to accomplish my goals other than just how important they are, because I let that go all the time. So I am ready to start implementing this, and I think where I'm gonna implement it in my life, you guys know that my goal is to get up early. It has been my goal since I started this channel, and I have not been making it. And thinking back on it, maybe my goal is a little too lofty, so I want to scale back and I want to slowly build myself up, just maybe making myself get up an hour earlier every day for, you know, the next 2 weeks. And once I accomplish that hour earlier, setting that somewhere between an hour or 30 minutes, I'll figure that out. because now I need to think about it. She has inspired me to really think things through so that I can have success. So we will see how that goes. I'm going to take her advice. I would love to know if you guys are reading this book as well, or if you've already read it, and what you thought of chapter 1 and 2, and have you tried scaling down your goals and making sure that they were bite-sized and you could handle them, and how did that help you? Next week I will be going over chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 is titled The Lie That I Am Not Good Enough. You guys know I love balance, and this has got some balance because chapter 4 is The Lie That I Am Better Than You. So there we go. I am excited for those 2 chapters, but I'm really glad I am doing this whole video series because it means that I have to take an entire week to focus on this book 2 chapters at a time and walk through that before I move on to the next thing. You guys are going to be participating in this series. You get to do the same thing, and I really encourage you so far from these first 2 chapters to get the book and read it for yourself. I am really loving it. It's funny. I don't know that it's like mind-blowing like I've talked about with You Can, You Will, that every line just blows your mind. I don't get that feeling from this book, but there is definitely some good information in here and some funny stories. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye guys.